Welcome to Eye On Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as I am each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, welcome to Eye On Sullivan.
Hey, thanks for, not having me. I'm part of the team.
You're part of the team. In fact, you are the team.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I will tell you, I woke up again in Florida this morning, and it was 64 degrees. By the time I left, it was 69 degrees, and we came into Stewart Airport, and it was 7 degrees.
Well, I woke up in my bedroom, and it was 64 degrees.
All right.
We took the dogs out, and it was below zero.
Yeah. Hope you
and
enjoyed that.
Been dealing with it ever since. Well, we got an important show today.
We do.
Boy, did Eye On Sullivan catch on in a big way last week.
Well, as you know, Mike, we're the only platform that, lets people come and tell their full story.
And folks, if you enjoyed last week's show, if you got a lot out of it, we're going to ask you again. The subscriptions are climbing. We need to get to the 1,000 number.
Yep.
And we're going to ask you, when you tune in either on Spotify or YouTube, we're going to ask that you subscribe. We've got to get to that 1,000 subscriber level. And we're going to ask that you share your information about the show. And on YouTube, that you be sure to
smash
that like button. And most importantly, folks, the only way that this show will improve, the way the platform will be if you leave us a comment, positive or negative. Be sure to leave us a comment. We got a lot of comments in the last couple of weeks when we had the undersheriff on. People literally stopping me on the street, in the jail. I wasn't in the jail myself. Well, actually, I was. Mm-hmm. And telling me how much they enjoyed the show and how much they enjoyed that we're taking on the different topics. So leave us a comment. Tell us about a topic that you think we should cover, a problem that's in the county that you don't think is being addressed. Leave us a comment, but subscribe, share, and smash that like button. All right, let's get right into today's program, because we are very fortunate again today to have the Sheriff of Sullivan County for approaching 20 years, Sheriff Michael Schiff. Mike, welcome to Eye On Sullivan.
Thank you for having me, both of you.
So we wanted to have you on today because of the comments that we've gotten on the last couple of shows. And people have come to me and left comments and said, well, it's great to hear from the undersheriff, but how come the sheriff isn't taking the lead on this?
So one of the things that, I've heard several times is, why hasn't the sheriff answered the allegations? And one of my responses to them, when they ask me that question is, where would you like him to do that? Right? I mean, there's not really a platform to do that. But, now there is a platform where, people putting out these blanket accusations. And that's all they are, folks, is accusations that have history behind them. And so we have to, kind of unravel that a little bit as well. And, that's why the sheriff is here today, to answer these allegations.
So, Sheriff, I'm going to get right into it now. And I'm going to try not to make this like a cross-examination, but I want to get to the root of the problems. But
that's what you do.
That's what I do. So a newspaper article comes out in the River Reporter about 10 days ago now, and it accuses your office, the office that you have been in charge of for the last 20 years, going on 20 years, of misconduct and corruption. Let's start there. How do you respond to that allegations in a headline in a county newspaper that you have presided over misconduct and corruption in your office?
I find it bizarre. I'm familiar with the accident report that they're referring to. I remember in 2000 when it happened, I remember hearing that it had to be amended because the officers' lights were engaged, and that was not reflected in the report. An amendment was made to that accident report, which is fairly routine in any police department, state police, local, city, sheriff. Nothing new there. About 2-3 years later, one of my lieutenants comes into my office showing me this and alleging that it was done wrong and that they changed it to a point where it shouldn't have been changed. And I got a little bit angry. I said, "You're coming to me with this now?" after 2-3 years. It's been adjudicated. It's been taken care of. What would you like me to do with it? So I said, I would look at it. I did. And the more I looked at it, there was a video to go with it that turned up after this report was done. And when you look at the video, you see the police car activate his lights. It's very grainy. It's very far off. It's hard to tell the angle of the cars exactly where they are. And he turns on his lights, goes over on the shoulder, and then starts a U-turn and drives into the side of the other car, to the front of the car. Because he hit the front and then the car continued forward, and in the narrative it says it scraped the whole side of the car.
Now, Sheriff, you were state trooper for 28 years. I'm told that troopers write a fair number of tickets and certainly report to lots of motor vehicle accidents, as does your office and as do Liberty and Fallsburg and our other local agencies. In your experience, and we're talking about going on 50 years of experience, is it uncommon for information to be developed after an accident scene is cleared, and result being that the accident report originally prepared by the trooper or the officer or the deputy on the scene needs to be changed?
No, that's a routine practice. That's nothing out of the ordinary.
So, but the allegations aren't that it was changed. The allegations are that it was falsified. And there's a big difference between changing or amending and falsifying. How do you respond to the allegations that your number 2 in command ordered the report to be falsified, not changed?
It's very troubling. Unfortunately, I think all these things are coming out timed around an election, and they were timed towards my undersheriff, and at a very late date. I have an open-door policy at the office. Not many sheriffs do. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any others that do. There may be some. Where any deputy, if I'm not tied up on something, can walk in my office and talk to me. There is absolutely no excuse for a member of our department not to be able to walk in, and I allow them to break the chain of command, even though that's not what a paramilitary organization does. But I'd rather know if something's wrong or needs addressing rather than let it go and it creeps up the chain of command or it doesn't get to me at all. So the people that came forward all had an opportunity to come into my office, sit down, and discuss any of these matters. And that was not done. So I have to look at it that there's another agenda here, not this accident. This accident is being used as a tool for an agenda.
So, Sheriff, when's the first time that this accident or accident report made it to your desk?
To my desk?
Well, into your office.
Would have been when the lieutenant brought it in. It's 2-3 years. It's probably closer to 3 years after the accident.
Okay. When the lieutenant come in, did he tell you that the report was changed or that it was falsified?
I believe he said to me that it was changed and improperly. And I looked at it with him, and I said, I'll follow up. I'll look at it some more. And I did. And the more I looked at it, the narrative did not change. The narrative still described the accident as it occurred. The only thing that changed was that the officer's lights were activated, which is a big part of that accident report. It's not a minor change. And that they changed the fault from the officer to the civilian, which if the lights were engaged, he should have taken some action, not continued pulling around the vehicle. Now, there's a question timing-wise. Could he have seen that in time to react? I don't know. When I look at the video and I look at the graininess of it and the angle, I'm not sure. So 3 years later, 2 years later, this has already been resolved. I looked at it, and I don't want to make a definitive call. This is all old news to anybody you're going to interview.
Now, in this, the civilian who was hit by the patrol car, they got paid out on this, correct?
I was led to believe that. I was told by some people at Liberty PD that they were the village paid out.
So
I can't swear to that, but that's what I've been told.
So it wasn't like, he's now a victim. I mean, he was paid out and made whole.
And secondly, I handle a lot of accidents. We are involved in them. Mm-hmm. When you have an accident, both insurance companies fight each other. They don't roll over. So it's not like you're defenseless there. I'm sure the owner didn't talk to the police department. His insurance company probably talked to the village and to their insurance carrier. And that's what normally happens. And the insurance company will go through this and find out what amount of blame would go to either party. And that's standard. So
Ultimately, a court of law will determine
Correct.
how to apportion the fault.
So even if we were wrong a little bit on it, that's not forging, that's not falsifying. We get it wrong sometimes. I was asked to look at a report about a year ago, and I was asked to change it because it was a complicated accident. And it just turned out, I called the officer in and I said, I think you need to change this. And he goes, no, I made it 50-50. That's what it should be. And I said, well, with the circumstances of that accident, I said, I don't see how that could be. Well, it just turned out he was a drone operator, and he had taken drone footage. He came in, he showed me the drone footage, and I looked at it, and I said, you're right. They could have gotten around that truck. You're right. You called it right, and we didn't make an amendment. So every time somebody asks for an amendment doesn't mean you automatically do it.
And again, these accident reports are not dispositive of ultimate fault in terms of an insurance company paying out. This is basically the deputy's conclusion of what they believe happened based upon their own training and experience.
Absolutely. Sometimes in an accident, if it's complicated, there's a death or a lot of money involved, insurance companies will hire an investigator to come and investigate that accident. We're no longer involved, but they may find a different finding than we do because their expertise might be better than ours. And they may come up with evidence that we didn't see. So the insurance companies are the ones at the end of the day battle this out. So I find it offensive. I find it misleading to say that this was falsified or forged. It was amended, and I don't know that it was amended improperly.
In fact, the deputy who responded to the scene that day, that deputy was not engaged in a collision reconstruction. That deputy wasn't trained as a collision reconstruction expert, were they?
No.
And are our deputies generally given some instruction and some training on accident scene management?
Sure, they get that in the academy. Every police officer that goes through has to go through a 6-month academy, and that's part of it. But it doesn't bring it to the level of an expert who investigates accidents.
Of a collision reconstructionist.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, this was first brought to light to you 2 or 3 years later, and it was brought to light not as a falsification. And then the next we hear about it presented to the legislature, to the safety committee of the legislature. How did that sit with you?
Not well. You just expect people to come forward and deal with the truth. If they don't understand something, that's forgivable. That's something I can understand. Not everybody sees everything the same way. Mm-hmm. But this clearly was being used as a tool. This was not being based on its own merit. This was brought forward with an agenda.
Now, in a recent Section 75 hearing, an employee discipline hearing, the newspaper article in the River Reporter attributed to your chief of patrol, Chief Muthig, that in fact the report was falsified and that he agreed with the deputy's original conclusions. Chief Muthig actually didn't say that it was falsified. He said that he disagreed with the conclusion, correct?
Yeah, I believe, I won't get his exact wording, that he thought the original report reflected the accident report, what occurred better. I don't think he didn't talk about any forgery, any misconduct, just he thought the first one reflected what happened better.
And is it unusual for multiple people to take a look at a grainy video and reach different conclusions?
I would not think so. I haven't found it to be so.
And in fact, how does it sit with you that ultimately your deputy probably got it right?
Well, with the first time?
Right.
Well, even if he got the part right, that whose fault it was, ultimately it had to be in there that he activated his emergency lights. It makes a huge difference. He had gotten a call, he activated his emergency lights, pulled off on the shoulder, and then that's where the guesswork comes in. That's where I can't see clearly exactly what happened, where that civilian's car was. Was he back far enough behind the vehicle? If a vehicle puts red lights on in front of you, you're going to slow down, not pass. So I don't know exactly what happened. I wasn't there. I didn't take the report. But looking at the whole thing, I'm not sure. I could call it either way.
And ultimately, the deputy, did you speak with the deputy that prepared the original report?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
He's been off on sick leave for quite some time.
All right. So it is my understanding that the information about the emergency lights came about through Liberty's internal investigation, not information that was conveyed to the deputy at the scene. Is that consistent with your understanding?
That's correct. My understanding is the accident report was done. Chief Kinney looked at it, and then when he got his memo from his officer and found out that it didn't reflect his emergency lights being activated as the officer's memo did, he called us and said, this has to change. This makes a big difference in the report, which it does. And there's been a little bit of mud thrown at Scott Kinney, the chief at the time. He did absolutely nothing wrong. He called in to get something amended to make it reflect what had happened. There was a major piece left out, and that was his job to do that. There was nothing wrong. He didn't ask for us to fix it, to make it where his guy's not at fault. He called us to add in that information and then take a look at it.
So you being the lead agency received information from another agency and looked into it and were sure that the report reflected the most recent information that you had. Isn't that correct?
The
ultimate accident report
The second
was
one, yes.
amended
Yes.
to include the information that was provided to you by another police agency.
Right. I wasn't involved in that. The undersheriff handled that call. All I knew was that it was amended to that the lights were activated. And then I didn't find anything more out until 2-3 years later when the lieutenant came into my office, who was no longer working for us, and advised me he thought there was something wrong with it.
And did it take 2 or 3 years for that accident report to be amended?
No. No.
So
that
the
was,
lieutenant comes in 2 or 3 years after it's amended,
yes,
and that's the first time it's brought to your attention.
correct.
Is it standard operating procedure for the sheriff to review all accident reports and all incident reports that are processed by the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office?
No, that would be rare. There would have to be something really special attached to it for me to get involved. I have people that do that. It's a large agency, and you try not to micromanage. And in reality, that's not my job, is to be doing accident reports.
So when a lieutenant brought it to your attention, you looked into it,
Correct.
and is it your opinion that it was appropriate to amend that report?
Yes.
Was there anything in the amendment that was a material falsification of information that was available to your office?
No. To my knowledge, nothing was falsified.
All right. So it was amended, not falsified.
Correct.
All right. So the next allegation about your department was that you are encouraging a hostile work environment to permeate your department. How do you respond to that?
Again, I think that's coming about as a tool. People did not come into my office. As it turns out, there were some disputes between a couple of the deputies, a lieutenant and a detective. They didn't come to my office or to the undersheriff's office and make a complaint. Apparently what happened was they went right to Human Resources and made the complaint. The first we knew about it was when we got a letter from Human Resources telling us they were both found guilty, both parties, of hostile work environment. And then with the one, he had retired, and they said if he comes back to work, you're to counsel him or take appropriate action. And the other one, they said you should take appropriate action on, and that's the one that was still working for us.
So, Sheriff, there was a argument made by Detective Harb's attorney at the Section 75 hearing, that's the employee discipline hearing, that you were retaliating against Detective Harb with these charges because he was a union president.
No, absolutely not.
You yourself have a history of involvement in the union with the state police.
Yes, I was very involved with the union with the state police, and I'm always looking out for workers' rights to protect our people.
Now, Detective Harb had made 2 complaints, and they were founded by an investigation undertaken by or through the Human Resources Department. The one was that some individual within your department had made a derogatory comment about folks of Jewish descent and folks of Palestinian descent, and Detective Harb is of Palestinian descent. Is this something that you encourage within your department?
No, we wouldn't allow that. We would condemn it. Again, these were recordings made where that came from that were not sanctioned, that should not have been made. Our rules and regs say you're not supposed to record other members. Now, that again did not come to our attention. I'm sure this is 2-3 years later.
So, I mean, there are those who would say that if you have nothing to hide, there's no problem being on camera. So that was part of the argument for body cams on law enforcement officers, that if you're doing everything right, all you'll do is promote that you're doing things correctly. So doesn't the same apply to someone walking around with everybody's got a tape recorder in their pocket now, their phones all have recording devices. Why are we concerned about people recording if we're not saying anything inappropriate?
It goes beyond that. When you've got a large group of people, when you've got a paramilitary organization, if you allow everybody to investigate everybody else, guys are going to be checking up on who's dating who, were you parked in a place I didn't approve of, or going to a diner with people I don't like. We can't have that. That's why you have an internal affairs. And that's where that's supposed to get bumped up to if you do have a problem internally. It would bring chaos. The state police have the same regulation. It's not okay. You report that up the line to internal affairs, and if they don't get it done, you can report it up the line further. But to allow everybody to walk around recording everybody else, knowingly or not knowing they're being recorded, is very inappropriate.
How would you ever have a confidential conversation?
You could not.
I mean, it'd be impossible.
And I think that's a problem now.
And
this has occurred in our agency, and a lot of other agencies I've heard said, of not even just police agencies, are very concerned now when our members walk in, and they're worried that they may be recorded.
Now, if I'm a union member and I go to my union, the head of the PBA, and I have a problem, I now am afraid of being recorded. Is that correct?
I would have to think yes.
Right. So now, if I can't talk to my union rep, then who do I talk to? So now you're creating a situation where I'm afraid to talk to my union rep on what's happening.
Police work in general, you have to trust the people you work with.
Correct.
And when you start recording people when they don't know it, for whatever reason, it's very inappropriate. If there's an investigation that has to be carried out, again, I'm going back, you go to internal affairs. You bucket up the chain, and the appropriate people will investigate and come up with a finding or not a finding of fault or not fault. But a very chilling effect when you don't know, as you're just having your lunch and just talking to somebody about whatever, or you're talking about a case. And that's also concerning that in those recordings, were there things recorded about cases? I don't know. I don't have those recordings. But it's very troubling that anybody in our office would think to do that, because I don't think anybody would feel too highly about someone, police officer or not, that recorded them without their knowing it. It would ferment distrust.
Is it fair to say also that when we have recordings, we run the risk of statements being taken out of context? We can take snippets of a recording and change the meaning.
Absolutely. The one you brought up with making the negative Israeli or Jewish comments, it's a phrase out of context that by itself is like, why would you ever make this comment? I want to find out, and I've asked for the county attorney to look into that and try to get me the information. What was said just prior to that? Right. What was the conversation that would bring that about? It's such a bizarre statement that was made, and we'll handle it regardless, no matter what. It's not an all right statement. But I'm very curious, what was the discussion that would make someone bring that up?
Because it could be an innocent comment, and then that's the response. People of Jewish and Palestinian descent, and then you're just taking that one snippet, as kids we do it all the time, and you say something, and then you have the person say something, awkward, and then you put it into a package, and it looks silly.
Absolutely. So I'm curious what was said before that. But secondly, this didn't come up until that person was being charges were being brought against him, and then all of a sudden he's got these recordings. So to me, that's very telling. They were fine, and they probably would have laid dormant for another 3 years if something didn't happen against him.
So, not to interrupt you, but so it's two people who are bringing these charges against you, correct?
Well, yeah, two.
Two. And they start in about 2020?
Yeah, maybe before.
So you're running an organization for 15 years. No one hears a blip. No, everyone's as happy as we could be in a 200-person organization. And then all of a sudden, some people have some founded charges against them, and now Mike's the bad guy. Mike Schiff is a horrible human being now.
It would seem so. Now, two things. One, if you're concerned with a hostile work environment, that should be reported immediately so action can be taken. If you don't report it, how do you expect action to be taken?
Correct.
And you can report that as a hostile work environment. I find it bizarre that was not reported. A comment like that, in or out of context, wasn't reported immediately so we could take action. It was not. The other thing I would say is, from Human Resources, I know the under got a letter and I got a letter that we were, in all those recordings, we were not found guilty of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that law firm that independently investigated that did not find it. It was just that one comment from that one person.
So, Sheriff, your critics would say it's hard to make reports when there's an impression that the person you would report to is the person who is creating the problem or is a person that's being protected by the sheriff. How can members of your department, and it's large and it's diverse, you've got people working in the kitchen, you've got people working in civil, you've got people working in corrections, you've got people working in medical, people obviously on the road patrol. How can they be confident in making reports that they won't be retaliated against?
I have had people in my office come in with complaints about other members between them and me, somewhere in that ranking, in the chain of command. And I've always said, just tell me what the problem is, I'll deal with it. Many times that's a verbal reprimand or telling someone, knock it off and do it this way. But many things were taken care of like that. And I've never had anybody come in and tell me, well, they probably wouldn't, that they didn't trust my judgment or that I would do something. But whenever somebody came in with something, I took some action.
And Sheriff,
up to and including that accident. I did look at it.
Can your staff be content and comfortable in the knowledge that when they come to you in an open door policy, that what they disclose to you will remain confidential and that they'll be protected and not punished based on what they report to you?
To my knowledge, that's how it's been working so far.
So one of the issues that was front and center in Detective Harb's complaint, or Detective Harb's Section 75 hearing, was that he had made some comments about another member of the staff. Now, you've used the term paramilitary organization, and I think that scares people that haven't dealt with police agencies because they right away hear the word military, and people even get upset about people having Bearcats because, well, we're not military. What do you mean by a paramilitary organization?
Paramilitary is we mimic the military. You have to follow a chain of command, and you have to follow orders. We're sending people out in the field, possibly where they could use deadly physical force or just their verbal skills. But they have to follow directions. You can't send them out as a group and go with 5 or 6 deputies to a scene and have everybody doing what they want to do. You have to give direction, and they have to follow that direction. So when they say paramilitary, it's that we're mimicking the military, that you follow your commands, you adhere to the rules to follow a higher-ranking officer giving you a command, you follow it. And then if you disagree with it, there are policies where you can go above that. So as long as somebody's not ordering you to break the law, you can go up the chain and you can try to amend what they told you to say or do.
So the allegations against Detective Harb were within the friendly confines of your building, with only sheriff's people there, that he uttered some less than favorable comments about another member of your department. Why is that a problem? Don't we want an open exchange of ideas and feelings within the friendly confines so that they can be addressed and sorted out?
As long as they fall within the proper confines. He had made a complaint against a higher-ranking officer. That officer made a complaint against him. The one retired prior to the charges. They both went to HR. The one got charged, as I said before, and they recommended that if he came back to work for us in a temporary manner, that we would counsel him or take some action. The other one, they recommended we take appropriate action. But they were two different types of complaints.
But Detective Harb is now suspended for 30 days. That's been out there as public. He made it public.
Mm-hmm. I can't comment on that, but yeah.
Okay. That's fine, and that's fair. And the main charge against Detective Harb was that he had made comments in what he represented was within a union meeting. And there was an issue of fact, and the finder of fact determined that it was not a union meeting, properly convened union meeting. But why is a mere statement about another officer, a superior officer, a lieutenant, why is that the type of conduct that gets somebody suspended? Why is that a problem within your organization if people voice their opinions about other humans?
Well, the circumstance of this. It was after lineup, and they were getting ready to count the ballots, and he read from a written diatribe, defaming and talking very badly about a higher-ranking officer. How do you fix that? How do you go back to work tomorrow and fix that? It eats at the core of the agency itself on how you're going to work together as a team, because you always have to work together as a team. And if you allow that to be broken down in any manner, if you allow it to be broken down, you're going to wind up with an organization that is not working well, it's not fluid, it's not going to be effective, because people will have that angst, they're going to have that anger, and they're going to dislike each other. So that is what creates a hostile work environment.
So, Sheriff, your employees, your detectives, go out on the streets of the county every day, and they don't know when they pull out of your parking lot what they're going to confront.
Correct.
Right? In fact, obviously, I know that a member of my family who is employed by the department left that parking lot one day and came back with part of his hand missing in a important multi-agency operation.
Yep, that was a bad night. It was there. Morning.
What I'm getting at is, what's your concern about disparaging comments about superior officers made to rank and file deputies when they go out in the street, literally, and like the situation that Labor Day morning where an emergency unfolded where we never expected that to happen? If there's been these disparaging comments and maybe questioning the authority and the expertise of superior officers?
Well, I don't know if I followed that completely, but by doing that, whether you disparage a higher-ranking officer or a lower, it breaks down the esprit de corps. It deteriorates it's like a rot. If you start having that, where people start fighting, they don't work together. And we have to work together as a team always, and you have to keep it's business. It's not personal. If you have personal stuff, take care of that outside the building. You take care of that in a different manner. You're going to stand up in front of 20, 25 other people, members of our agency, within our house, and talk badly about any other member to that degree. That's problematic.
So, Sheriff, if a first or second year deputy has a concern, and I'll go right all the way up the chain of command, about the undersheriff, about an order that the undersheriff gave him, does that deputy have an option to speak to a lieutenant or a chief or yourself about those concerns?
Absolutely, right up the chain. And if you don't get satisfaction, right up to me.
And that applies. The analogies we discussed were in the road patrol, but certainly that would apply within the jail as well. If someone had a problem with Chief Smith,
absolutely,
there would be a mechanism for that.
Yes.
So,
and I've had jail deputies come in my office also and go around because of different instances, and they wanted to get directly to me, and that wasn't a problem. And there was never any retaliation. They come in, they speak to me, I hear the problem, and then I bring it back down through the chain of command.
So, Sheriff, you've announced for re-election.
Yes.
We've got another individual that is also seeking the Republican nomination or Republican endorsement at this point.
Correct.
And what's your message to the first line of voters, the Republican committee people who will do an endorsement?
I would hope they'd look at the last 19 years. I'm starting my 20th year, where we've taken the department from and where we've gone to with the help of the legislature by funding our projects, having school resource. When the state police pulled out of the schools with the school resource, we stepped back in. We didn't allow those schools to go without people to look after those children. The legislature worked with me to do that. We've created a response team. So when we have a very dangerous warrant execution, a barricaded subject, anything of that type, we're able to respond in a safe manner. Our first year, the second month, February of 2006, we had an incident where one of our deputies was shot at. The bullet just missed him, and we had to do a standoff for quite some period of time. We didn't have the proper equipment. We didn't have the training, and we decided then that we were going to get that.
And I also believe you were told that SWAT from Newburgh was 5-6 hours out.
Well, we called them right away. They were over 4 hours to get to us.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a special tactics unit at that time.
No, we had people, our deputies are great folks. They're incredible. They came from home in their civilian clothes with a Winchester, a pump shot, whatever they had. They came from home and laid in the slush. It was a horrible, horrible day. And they just froze. They didn't have the proper clothing. What's that?
Reminiscent of the Civil War.
Yeah, or this morning.
You know the good news about that? This morning I saw that deputy at the airport in Florida.
It's because of him we started the team and that we got an armored vehicle. Mm-hmm. Because if he had been hit, it hit the controls of the seat right underneath him, missed him by maybe an inch. If that had hit his hip, he would have been disabled, and he wouldn't have been able to maneuver. The rifle was a .45-70, an old Sharps, and we couldn't have got to him.
So is it fair to say that the safety of your deputies was the main catalyst of getting the Bearcat and putting that training?
Absolutely. And all the other things. We patrol the lakes. We have boats. We got ATVs, UTVs. We've gotten the equipment we need to go help people, rescue people, and do what's needed when the bell rings. We got drones. You were instrumental in that. Mm-hmm. And that has been an incredible program. We found things we could use those drones for that we never imagined.
I mean, just down in Uland, 2 months ago, they had no idea. You'd have to be a billy goat to get up the mountain to see where the fire was. The drone went up. The chief down there, applauded you in public about, thank God for these drones. We would have never been able to put this fire out. And, it's a big deal. Again, the safety of not just your department, but of other first responders is being, addressed by the sheriff's department.
Yeah, that particular week, I believe the day before or 2 days before, they had that warehouse fire behind Albella's. Mm-hmm. And I got there, and all you could see was smoke. So Charlie Stackhouse was working. I said, called him on the phone, you got your drone? He said, yeah. I said, get over here. Goes up, looks at it with the drone. Well, can't see nothing. Goes to the thermal imaging, and now you can see everything. You can see where the fire is. And he's over with the chief of the fire department, Monticello, and they're looking at a screen, and the chief's calling them, telling them where to put the flow of water because they couldn't see where to put the water, and directing them. And the chief says, Who would ever thought we'd be fighting fires like this? Then we had after the Ulen incident, we had the Pines caught fire.
Mm-hmm.
And Detective Velastro was at that scene, and a wall collapsed during the fire. He had the drone up in the air,
Mm-hmm.
and the wall collapses, and the fire chief says, "Did my guys get out?" Velastro, I think, has a couple extra eyes because he sees everything. That guy doesn't miss a thing. And he goes, "Nope, your guys got out." So firemen did not need to go back into that fire to see if that wall had trapped anybody. Then a day or two later, we had in Sundown, we had the forest fire with the high winds. And we split it up with the state police and the Ulster County Sheriff, kept the birds in the air around the clock. When there was a flare-up and directing the firemen where to go.
So is it fair to say when your opponent, mocks the use of the Bearcat and the use of the drones, that he's just disregarding the safety of the people he's looking to lead and the other first responders in the county?
I would just hope he doesn't understand. I would hate to think otherwise.
Okay.
So, Sheriff, we as always, we've moved quickly to the near the completion of our time for today. And again, for our audience, if you find this platform is helpful and is informative, we need you to subscribe. We need you to subscribe. We've got to get to that 1,000 subscriber level. We want you to share your information about this. When you get on YouTube, you want to
smash
that like button and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. The only way that we can improve the content of Eye On Sullivan, which is really a platform put together for the people of Sullivan County, is for you to let us know what you want to hear here, who you want to hear from, and what issues you want us to cover. You can also send us an email at eyeonsullivan@gmail.com. That's EYE on Sullivan@gmail.com. And Sheriff, I want to thank you again for taking the time. And I have one final question for you.
And I have one final thing to throw in when I get a minute.
My final question is this. You've been the sheriff for going on 20 years. You've been reelected a number of times. You've built a department here. Is it your expectation that the leadership of the Republican Party will support your candidacy and endorse you?
I'm hoping. I've heard different reports, but I'm hoping that they will support me. We'll see.
Well, is it your expectation, though, that they will, because you've been the sheriff for 20 years?
I would say my expectations have gotten pretty low.
Wow.
I don't expect much from anyone at this point. A couple of allegations are made, and people just seem to disappear.
And how does that make you feel after 20 years of dedicated service to this county?
Well, it doesn't make me feel good, but I don't expect a pat on the back, and I don't expect for what we do, for everybody to be on my side. We do a job. I am thrilled to be the sheriff of Sullivan County. I love doing it. I loved it when I was a trooper. And, if I can stay another 4, if the people of Sullivan County will have me, I'm hoping I will. And I'm looking forward to another term if I can get it.
Great. So you said you had one other thing that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, the one other thing is
30 seconds.
Coffee with the sheriff. I keep hearing that that's just a waste of time. I should be making drug busts. I don't do drug busts.
Caffeine is a drug.
It is. I go to the drug busts. I go to the raids. I attend most of that stuff. But the Coffee with the Sheriff is a community outreach. Everybody says I'm for community policing, and they got the book, they got the banner on the wall, and they're all about it. But community policing means getting out in the community and seeing the people that you work for.
Mm-hmm.
I go out with Coffee to the Sheriff to allow people to come to me, just like I allow my deputies to come to my office. I go to them. We go around the county. I allow people to approach me. I look forward to them approaching me so we can discuss their problems. And there's never been a Coffee with the Sheriff where someone didn't have at least one problem. Same thing with going to fire pancakes or church pancake dinners or chicken dinners. That's to get out in the community and put yourself out there. And secondly, to support those organizations. In a county like Sullivan, without fire, public safety just doesn't work, period. For the state police, for the sheriff's office, for nobody. If we didn't have their manpower and their equipment, it just doesn't work. So for us not to support them, for us not to go to their functions, and to put ourselves out there in their community so that they're citizens in their area can question us and come ask us questions or ask for help. And I think that's so important, and it's getting twisted. And it's exactly what it's supposed to be, community policing. And I do see my friends there that are running that they're going to all the breakfasts and going to things. I guess only in election time you're supposed to go out. Russell Reeves and I go around all year long to everything we can go to, and it's not about getting elected. It's about going out and seeing our constituents, what they need from us, and discussing things with them. So
well, let's hope that you have Russell Reeves' support and his endorsement.
I believe I do.
So, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't President Trump launch a decisive attack against ISIS while he was having coffee with Xi Jinping?
I don't think he was drinking coffee, but yes, he was having a beverage.
I think it was over cake and coffee, whatever he was drinking.
I think he was having a Diet Coke.
He was probably having a Diet Coke. But
he said
it didn't stop the United States military from carrying out his orders, just as when the sheriff is having coffee, it doesn't stop his crew.
I will tell you that the pancake breakfasts are exactly that. Everyone, a lot of people mock them, but there is never a time you go to them when you're in office. I know when I was in office, I'd go to them. People would come up to you. They say stuff to you. They give you suggestions. I know for a fact that Russell Reeves has added stops for the mobile DMV because of it. You're in your office and you're working, right? It's hard to get out and have people, people aren't going to come into your office and say, hey, Russell, what do you think about this? It doesn't happen that way. But in a very casual setting, people come over and they talk to you and they give you their ideas. And, a lot of times that's when you get to see them. And this is a big county. And, most of the offices, for the sheriff and the county clerk and, the legislature, they're in Monticello. So if you live in Tustin or, Neversink or Roscoe, you don't get to drive 30 minutes to lodge a complaint and then drive home is not very likely. But you're like, you know what? I know the sheriff goes to these things. We're going to have, a Roscoe pancake breakfast, which, by the way, they make their own sausage, and I suggest you go to it. It was just a couple of weeks ago. Put it on your calendar.
And their pancakes are very good.
Yeah, put it on your calendar. And they, if you go to them, you will see Mike doesn't do a whole lot of eating at these things. A lot of it is talking to people.
That's right.
Right? And he always likes to stay behind, so that he can thank the volunteers at the very end.
So, again, on behalf of
let me just
Chairman
throw
Rob
in,
Doherty.
Russell Reeves and his wife are two of my dearest friends. If I can't trust Russell Reeves, I'm in real trouble.
Well,
he's like my best friend. So
I agree with you there. So again, on behalf of the Chairman Rob Doherty, we want to thank the sheriff for taking time from his busy schedule to join us here today. And to our audience, remember, we need you to subscribe, share, like, and comment. Thanks, folks. We'll be back next week with another edition of Eye on Sullivan.